So let's talk about one of the biggest, most fundamental questions in all of economics. How should we, as a society, deal with massive amounts of wealth? And specifically, how should we tax it? This is a debate that is absolutely raging today, but it's one that started centuries ago.
And look, this isn't just some dusty old textbook question. This is at the heart of political battles all over the world right now. It really forces us to ask, what's the right balance between fairness and keeping the economy growing? To really get to the bottom of this, we're going to look at it through the eyes of two absolute giants of economic thought.
So in one corner, you've got the guy who literally wrote the book on modern economics back in the 18th century, Adam Smith. And in the other corner, you have the 21st century economist Thomas Piketty, a guy whose work has completely reshaped how we talk about wealth and inequality today. We're talking about a debate that stretches across 250 years.
All right, let's dive in, and we'll start with the moderate argument. Thomas Piketty makes a case that is so powerful, it basically challenges the entire economic status quo.
Okay, so Piketty's whole idea, it kind of boils down to this one super simple but totally game-changing formula. R is greater than G. Now, R is just the rate of return on capital. Think of it as how fast your money makes money if you've got it in stocks, real estate, things like that. And G, that's the rate of economic growth, which is really closely tied to how fast wages go up for most people.
Now here's the kicker. Piketty looked at centuries of data and found that almost always the return on capital has been way higher than economic growth. So what does that mean? It means wealth from just owning stuff grows a whole lot faster than wealth from working for a living. So what's the big deal?
Well, the result is that wealth just snowballs. It concentrates right at the very top. If your money is making money faster than the economy is growing, you just keep pulling further and further ahead of everyone else. Over generations, this creates what Piketty calls a hereditary aristocracy of capital, a world where the biggest fortunes are inherited, not earned. And that really threatens the whole idea that we live in a meritocracy, right?
And if that wasn't enough, Piketty points out that our tax systems actually pour gasoline on this fire. Why? Because income from investments, capital gains, is often taxed at a much lower rate than the income you get from your salary. So the wealthiest people can end up paying a smaller slice of their income in taxes than a regular middle-class worker.
So what's his fix? It's pretty straightforward, really. He says, let's stop treating money made from wealth differently than money made from work. His solution is to tax capital gains and dividends at the exact same rates we tax salaries. For Piketty, this is the only way to tap the brakes on this runaway train of wealth concentration and restore some fairness.
But hold on, it's not quite that simple. Let's hit the rewind button and travel way back to the 18th century. Because Adam Smith, writing over 250 years ago, has a really powerful counterargument.
Now, first things first, let's get one thing straight. You might think Adam Smith would be totally against taxing the rich, but he wasn't. In his masterpiece, The Wealth of Nations, he actually said it's perfectly reasonable for the wealthy to chip in more. His big concern wasn't if we should tax the rich, but how we do it.
He had these 4 big rules for what makes a good tax. Basically, it should be fair and proportional, it should be predictable, it should be easy to pay, and it shouldn't cost a fortune for the government to collect. For him, any tax had to pass these tests. But his biggest warning, that came when he thought about what you should be taxing. And this is the exact point where he and Piketty would go head-to-head. Smith was really worried about what he called a country's movable stock. Today, we just call it capital. Money, investments, machinery, all the stuff that isn't nailed down. And here is Smith's core fear. If you tax that capital too heavily, it'll just leave. It will pack its bags and go find a country where it's treated better. And we see this all the time today, right? Countries trying to lure businesses with lower taxes. The result, Smith worried, is that you lose investment, jobs disappear, and your own workers are left high and dry.
So there you have it, two sides of the same coin. Two brilliant thinkers, centuries apart, but both focused on two completely different but very real risks. Let's break down exactly where they disagree.
Okay, so let's look at this. For Piketty, the #1 goal is fairness. His biggest fear is that new aristocracy of inherited wealth, which he thinks is a direct threat to democracy itself. And his core principle is that government must step in to fix that R greater than G problem. Then you have Adam Smith. His goal is growth and efficiency, making the whole economic pie bigger for everyone. His absolute biggest fear? Capital flight. Money leaving the country, starving the economy of investment. So his principle is simple. Design your taxes so you don't scare away industry.
And, well, that brings us right back to today. We're still caught in the middle of this epic debate, trying to find the right balance between these two powerful visions.
It really boils down to this central tension. this massive trade-off. On one side, you have the risk of doing nothing. If you let that R greater than G inequality run wild, you could seriously damage the idea of a meritocracy. But on the other side, you have the risk of action. If you tax capital too much, you could scare away investment and choke off the very economic growth that we all rely on.
And that is why this is so much more than a history lesson. Every single time you hear politicians arguing about a wealth tax or changing capital gains, they are, whether they realize it or not, refighting this exact same battle between Piketty's fear of an aristocracy and Smith's fear of capital flight.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. In our crazy, interconnected world, which is the bigger danger? Is it the instability that comes from extreme wealth getting concentrated in fewer and fewer hands? Or is it the economic stagnation that could happen if that capital just up and leaves for a better deal somewhere else? There's no easy answer, but how we decide to solve that puzzle is going to define our future.